we work with a lot of clients and we provide IT services for those clients, both infrastructure security. And one of the common issues that we've come across with a lot of our clients is that onboarding and offboarding is something that absolutely has to be done, but it often falls on the IT team to get the majority of those tasks within onboarding and offboarding completed. But those tasks don't allow the IT team to really move the company forward. They're really tasks that just have to get done. And often they're a lot more complex than people realize. So one or two tasks here and there will sort of fall by the wayside. This is an example of just how complex it is. This is a very small company. They have less than 100 people on staff, and their digital platforms are also very simple. So it's not very complicated to onboard someone, but even a small company that doesn't have a lot of complex applications to get access provisioning for, when you actually lay out all the steps that are involved, it actually gets pretty complex. And so this has sort of led us to provide onboarding and offboarding services where you click a few buttons and we will take care of onboarding John Doe and Jane Smith for you. So let's switch over to the actual product demo so you can see what the interface looks like. And I'm going to break this down into two parts. The first part, I'm really going to show you a day in the life of onboarding somebody new from your perspective, the HR manager, the IT provisioning person, the reporting manager, and potentially the director or department head as well. And then I'll take a short break there. We'll take some questions, and then we'll jump into part two. And part two is really us showing you where the magic happens. We're going to pop the hood, see what's underneath, and take a look at how it all works and how we actually build a lot of the processes that go into onboarding and offboarding. So with that, let's switch over to the product demo. Here we go. So our onboarding and offboarding service centers around a core portal that all stakeholders can log into. And every stakeholder will see something a little bit different depending on what their access levels are. In this case, we're going to log in as the HR manager. And this is what that looks like. So you'll notice that the HR manager has a unique button, the onboard new hires button. And when he clicks on that, or she, you get a form where the hiring manager can input all the core details of the new hiree, their name, their date of joining. And here they have to enter some really critical elements, what the job title is, what the role rank is, and what the department is. And the reason why this is important for the onboarding and offboarding is it has a preset default of access provisioning and hardware provisioning that is provided to the new hiree. And here you can see a summary, so the hiring manager can double check what they've input. And once they hit submit, this then automatically triggers an email to the reporting manager. The reporting manager is the person that the new hiree reports to for day-to-day activities. And that reporting manager has the responsibility of going in, taking a look at all the default applications that the hiree is being assigned to, and also has the ability to customize those applications and SaaS platforms that the new hiree will have access to. In this case, we're using the example of hiring a senior graphic designer. And this graphic designer happens to be a whiz at all these applications and will really help the company move forward in marketing. So Luke, the new hiree, will get access to everything. And on top of that, we'll also get a Wacom tablet and a high-end Macintosh. Now on this screen, you'll also notice that there's a lot of pricing information. There's prices for every single one of these applications, and you get a total price at the top. The reason why this is important is very often the reporting manager doesn't hold the purse strings. And so after they submit this request, normally somebody else would have to come in and approve that spending for this new hire. For this example, Dunder Mifflin, small company, there is nobody above to approve. The reporting manager has that budgetary control. So he hits approve and submit. Now, as soon as that happens, the first email that's going to get sent out is to the HR manager. Also triggers emails to other people as well, but the HR manager will now know that the ticket that was originally submitted, it's now officially off and running. The reporting manager has made the changes that need to be made. The next thing that's going to happen is now the new hiree will get one email to their personal email address. But that email will contain the credentials for the new hiree. Those credentials will allow the individual to log into the work email address that was newly created. And you'll see here that not only is there a login name and password, but the password is also change me ! So now the new hiree can log in to their work email address. And this is where you can put some wonderful conditions in. So for example, here we show that the initial password is change me. But after you get through the agreement screen, you'll notice that we're forcing the new hiree to immediately pick a new custom password. Now, after this stage is completed, you'll get this optional screen here. And this optional screen is to set up multi-factor authentication. Now, we can have this set up so the new hiree has to do that. But in this case, we made it optional, so we'll just skip that step for now. Now, you'll notice that now that the new hiree has logged in to their brand new work email address, they've already received a number of emails. These emails, most of them are access to the various application platforms. It could be Adobe Cloud, it could be Zoom, Slack, Confluence, etc. But specifically, we can add in additional unique emails as well. In this particular case, we're saying that we're also going to email in PDF format the employee handbook. Now, we can add in additional conditions to this. For example, we could include the hiree as part of the stakeholder process, which I'll explain later, and he'll have to sign it and send it back. In this case, Dunder Mifflin says, that's okay, as long as you have it, we're good. And that essentially sort of outlines a lot of the automatic sign-on processes and how all of that is taken care of. It's very, very fast, very quick, and we make sure that none of those steps are missed. But a lot of our clients, in addition to access provisioning to application platforms, AD, Azure, AWS, et cetera, they also want us to do other parts of the onboarding, offboarding process that the IT team often has to be involved in. For example, laptop provisioning. Now, we have some clients for whom we're doing laptop provisioning for them. We have other clients for whom we are simply customizing the ticketing interface so that we're emailing the IT team of our client to do the laptop provisioning. And that really just depends on what your preferences are. We can do the service for you as a tier 1 bolt-on service. The ticketing, of course, if we send it to the IT department, would be included in the core function. Now, in this case, you're seeing the hiring manager now receiving emails as these sub-tickets get closed out. So in that first email, you're seeing that Luke, the new hiree, has received the employee handbook. And then you're also seeing, we're going to assume that the IT department is superhuman and they've already imaged, provisioned, and sent out the laptop. So you're going to see all of these in sequence. The first one is the laptop has been properly provisioned. The second one is the laptop has been sent out. And the third one is the laptop tracking information has been sent to all relevant parties. So one of the other cool things about this is you can see right here, this is a lot like ordering something from Amazon, where you click to get notifications of delivery. Every stage of delivery, you get a notification. This is very, very similar. But the HR manager also has another capability. He or she can go into the portal and track that onboarding process, exactly where it is, and find out if there's any holdups at all. Now, anytime you have onboarding where there's a lot of manual steps, of course, there's always the possibility that one of those manual steps will get held up for a number of different reasons. And so here, the HR manager can go in, track where things are, and if things are good, solid. If not, the HR manager can track which ticket has been held up and go get after that to figure out root cause. Now, after that, we're assuming here that for Dunder Mifflin, the laptop is provisioning is part of the onboarding process. And so the hiree has now received an email that includes the tracking information. So that could be FedEx or UPS or whatever that is. But more importantly, we've customized this email a little bit. Specifically for this client, they require that orientation doesn't happen until after the laptop is shipped out. And so we've added this sentence here. You will be receiving a calendar invite for orientation in the next few days. Please check your email. Now, what's happening here is the reporting manager is also receiving an email that the laptop was shipped out and now is coordinating with the new hiree orientation. Now, again, let's assume that orientation happens very, very quickly. And so it's been a few days, everything is done, all the orientation is completed, and we're ready to close out this ticket. What the reporting manager then does is goes back into the portal and closes out the parent ticket, which is what we just saw happen right now. When that occurs, now the entire onboarding process from a technical provisioning aspect has been completed. And the HR manager will now receive a final email saying that onboarding of Luke Cooper, the new senior graphic designer, has been completed. And that's it. That's what our onboarding and offboarding service looks like for our clients. Now I'll take a quick stop here. And I was going to take some questions, but I did want to make sure that we're sort of moving along at a good pace. So rather than taking questions now, if you can hold those questions until after, I think we've got a few already. If you can hold those questions until the tail end, we will have a QA session. For now, let me jump into part 2. And in part 2, we're really going under the hood to see what the technology looks like and how we work with the technology on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing you do from a back-end or under the hood perspective is you go into the employee onboarding module. Now, in the employee onboarding module, you're really doing 3 things. First, you're identifying all your stakeholders, the hiring manager, the reporting manager, the department head, of course, the hiree as well. Next, you need to figure out what each stakeholder's contributions, their responsibilities for this onboarding process are going to be. And under that contribution, it might be adding data, it could be manipulating data, making some additional changes. And finally, we'll go through and pick the items required for the new hires. So let's take a look at that interface. You'll see here that on the left, there are 5 buttons. Those 5 buttons are add stakeholders, build kits, create tickets, modify approvals, and advanced settings. Let me summarize that really quickly before diving into details. So add stakeholders should be pretty self-explanatory. Build kits and create tickets, they both sound similar, but the difference is a build kit is a service request for commonly done tasks. Those commonly done tasks are pulled from a service catalog. A lot of the items in that service catalog are built into the system already. But what's great about this is if you have commonly done tasks that you can package together, you can actually put those into the service catalog and you can draw from them anytime you want. The create tickets is a little bit different. It's a lot more flexible and you can have child tickets as well. Its core function is really to help out with manually done processes. So if an email needs to go out to the HR person, the IT person, the hiree, a lot of that is handled by the create tickets. It's very flexible and very powerful. Modify approvals, pretty self-explanatory, and then we'll dive into advanced settings. And advanced settings, that's where the real magic happens. So let's start and go back to the beginning with add stakeholders. Now, in this example, we've got two stakeholders here. We've got the hiring manager and reporting manager, plus, of course, the employee that we haven't set any actions for. Let's take a look at the hiring manager. Once you decide that stakeholder's role, you then have to decide what that stakeholder's function is, what their contribution will be to the process. In this case, the hiring manager is inputting data. And you might recognize this. All of these fields are the fields that the HR manager saw in part one when first onboarding and creating that ticket. We don't really have to spend too much time on reporting manager, just to show you that the reporting manager doesn't have fields they have to enter. And that's because they have other functions. There are other things that stakeholders have to do besides just inputting data. Next, let's dive into the build kit. So in the earlier example in part one, we were talking about hiring a graphic designer. So in this case, you see that we've created onboarding processes for a number of different roles and ranks. Let's dive into the one that we were seeing earlier. Here you can see that you can assign the department, which is graphic design, the role, which is a senior role within the graphic design department. And of course, you can add additional conditions as well. And you'll notice in part one, there were some default items that the new hire already had access to or was getting access to. That's where in this screen, you mark it as mandatory. That means for this particular role and rank, they automatically get access to these applications and SaaS platforms. But you can also pull from the service catalog all the optional items that you want to give to the new hiree, depending on what the reporting manager requires. And if we take a look at that service catalog and jump in, that's here. Right now, you can see all service items, but you can see how it's broken down between hardware provisioning, and that's where you can pick, the Mac or Wacom tablet. Software installation, this is where you pick what software gets installed on the machine on any hardware. Then you'll also see data services. Now, this is really cool. It allows you to create functions around actual processes. So whether it's data backup or file restore. And then finally, application access. And this is where you do your access provisioning for all the various applications and cloud SaaS platforms that you have. And that's what the service catalog looks like. So now let's go back. You scroll down a little bit. Here is where the reporting manager, you noticed earlier in stakeholders, the reporting manager had no fields that they were entering. Well, this is one of the actions that a stakeholder does. The reporting manager is selected as the person who can modify the service catalog items. So next, we'll jump into create tickets. And earlier I mentioned that create tickets is incredibly flexible and powerful. In this example here, we're showing the laptop provisioning. And again, this is a service that we can provide whether we do it or we do tickets for you. In this example, we're creating tickets for the client's IT team to do the provisioning itself. So here we include all the information that's needed to image and then provision the laptop. You'll notice that in the upper section that we're just scrolling here, you'll see job title, name of the employee, et cetera. All that information is relevant to the laptop. But then in the lower part, create tickets can actually also draw from the service catalog. And so you can assign which applications need to be installed onto that laptop. All right. So you have a lot of flexibility and control. And you'll also notice that Workspace said IT, and that means it's designed for the IT team to take care of. So now let's move into modify approvals, and this will sort of close out the basics of it, and then we can get into the more exciting stuff, the advanced settings. But approvals is very simple. This is, in this case, we had auto approve tickets turned on. That means all those changes that the reporting manager made that turned into $6,700 of new items, all of that is automatically approved. The reporting manager has that budgetary control. But you can turn that off for security reasons or for compliance reasons, like SOC 2 compliance. You might want to turn that off and have somebody else with budgetary control be required to go in and approve that step before that ticket moves forward. So that's the basic setup for how to create the environment here. And now let's jump into advanced settings. and this is really where the cool stuff happens. There's three things that we're going to talk about here. There's the orchestration center, the orchestration server, and the workflow automator. So let's start with the orchestration center. Now, the orchestration center is the easiest way to think about it is like an app marketplace. This is where you can go in and see all of the different applications that all have already been pre-integrated with Freshservice. And the thing to note here is that what the application can do in its integration varies from app to app. So you really have to go in and take a look at what's already been pre-integrated. That doesn't mean that that's all you can do. You can do other things, but those things would have to be scripted or coded in some way. These are already pre-built in and ready to fly. So in this example, we're looking at Dropbox, and you'll notice that you can do things like add a user to groups, add user to teams. You can also do additional features that go beyond onboarding and offboarding. And of course, that's because this is the app marketplace for Freshservice as a whole. We today are just talking about the onboarding and offboarding. So next is the orchestration server. Now, unfortunately for this demo, we didn't set up any working ones, but what makes the orchestration server so powerful is that it integrates natively with on-prem AD. Now, a lot of companies, even digital native companies, will often still have an on-prem AD element. And so being able to work with that on-prem AD to perform the same functions that the on-prem AD can do can be incredibly powerful. For example, if your AD is set up to control access to, let's say, a LAN inside a NAS inside your headquarter environment, the orchestration server can communicate with AD to make that happen. It can also work with AD to enable or disable access to user computers, which is also powerful during the onboarding and offboarding process. You may have a new hiree that sits at a desk in an office. You may have a hiree who's remote. Having that control can be incredibly powerful. And that's a quick look at the orchestration server. Now let's jump in to my favorite part, which is workflow automations. And we talk a lot about automating various processes within a larger set of tasks so that we can conduct and complete those processes without us having to do a lot of manual labor. This is where that magic happens. So we're going to show you two things in here. First is going to be the onboarding, and the second one will be test workflow. Onboarding is the G Suite user creation. So we're actually showing you a real world process, and it's the one that we showed you in the demo. Early on in part one, I talked about how the very first task that's automated is the creation of a work email address for the new hiree, and then emailing those credentials to that hiree. So you see here the entire process. Even that one simple task actually has a lot of steps involved. And so what we're doing here, what we're showing here is, if you look at that fifth step, A3 create user, well, here you can actually add in some additional custom capabilities. So for example, this is a G Suite account that we're creating. So we could add in a task like add a share drive, the graphic designer's share drive, to this account. And so as soon as the account's created, that new user will automatically have access to that drive within G Suite. So that's some of the customizations that you can do within a workflow. Now let's take just a quick look at what it's like to build one of these out. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, just a few seconds. And I should remind you, this is the very last piece that we're going to show for this demo before I hand it back off to Bill to talk a little bit about pricing. So here in this example, we have added a new app. You can add in a number of things. You can add in data objects, you can add in cloud objects, or even formulas. In this case, we're adding apps, and we've decided to add in a G Suite app. And what we want to do here is assign a new user to a group. And so you'll see here the list of tasks that you can do. Now, rather than fill all this out, I think a lot of this is self-explanatory. You would need to input the strings that it pulls from. to get the group key, what group the hiree is assigned to, the email, that's also a pulled one, delivery settings and role. And of course, that red asterisk means it's mandatory. And that's how you work with this is just a light taste of how we work with the entire onboarding and offboarding process. And again, I should note that we build this out for every role, rank, and department that you would have within your sort of career positions that you have available. And with that, let me hand off to Bill again to talk about pricing.
Excellent. Thank you, Tetsu. That was terrific. So quick walk through pricing. Discovery, it's always free. The setup fee is $6,000. However, it's free for the first 3 webinar participants. Automations, integrations, and consulting, 50% off for the first 3 webinar participants. And for this group, the monthly subscription is $1,500 per month, up to 250 employees with 14% churn. So this is, for this audience here, fast growth SaaS companies. For exact pricing, let's sit down, or as we say in my native New Jersey, let's have a sit down, talk, and do a discovery. And with that, we'll open it up to Q&A.
Okay, looking at the questions, one of the questions is the approvals for onboarding gear expenses. Can a policy be set to avoid requiring multiple sign-offs? Yes. We actually showed the button that you can actually automatically approve upon submission, or you can enforce approvals. And you can actually approve in the workflow, build in multiple approvals, such as the manager or the comptroller or CFO. The other questions, two-factor authentication and similar IT requirements. Is there an integration with security compliance platforms like Vanta to be able to tie security policies with enforcement? Vanta integration to Freshservice is new. It is there, and it'd be interesting to see what exactly it would entail. Some other applications that are out there, we can actually build APIs ourselves to integrate and gain further functionality. Do you do laptop provisionings for us? We can. We do it for some of our other clients. We can even build in automation to build a server. There's a lot of possibilities. How will your service add logon accounts for apps not in a Freshservice integration list? Again, we can build out APIs to connect to in-house developed applications. There's a lot of different possibilities. With the automation server, you know, if you have something on-prem, we can actually reach into that server and run a script that actually builds it out. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. Is this program secure for personal data? Yes, it is. We can configure it for multi-factor authentication, single sign-on. It is compliant for SOX, so it will meet security guidelines. I saw change management. Is that something you also do? What else does Freshservice provide? Yes. So Freshservice is a full-fledged IT service ITIL tool. It provides incident request management. You've seen the request management side of things. There is a module for change management. It can be integrated with IT asset management for managing changes such as, you know, I'm going to do a server change. I'm going to do a network change and let you know if there's going to be collisions, such as, you know, the server's going to be rebooted during the time that the network's down, so there's no access to it. it can set up a CAB review process. What else can it do? So there is also analytics to get an understanding of the works that's being done. There is a project. So it has a lot of functionalities. And like at the beginning of this webinar, I come from a ServiceNow organization. ServiceNow has a lot of functionality. Freshservice is a much cheaper competitor to it. And it too has a lot of functionality and is trying to catch up with ServiceNow. Is this program secure for personal data? I think I've already covered that one. What does the discovery encompass? So as Bill went over pricing, what it will encompass is a meeting to understand what your current workflow is, what your current infrastructure is. If the need is to provision devices, what exactly is your process for procurement, for imaging, or do you need one? These are all things that are discussed and planned out during the discovery process. What does automation, integration, and consulting cover? What does so the integration and consulting basically understands what your current workflow and processes are, and starts developing a plan to automate all that stuff and to truly, take control of your onboarding and offboarding processes. Which SSO apps are supported? All of them. There is integration to Okta, to Azure, AWS, G Suite. There's a lot of built-in functionality for SSO. Two-factor authentication supported. Yes, it does. I believe we can do Duo. We can do Microsoft authentication for two-factor authentication. And can your service integrate with hardware vendors to image and ship laptops and desktops? There is built-in integration to Intune and Autopilot. Those are the two that are typically the more common ones. I'm sure there's other integration applications that are out there. What plan was the demo being previewed on Freshservice Pro or Enterprise? In that regard, I would recommend Freshservice Pro just for the analytics. I believe in data, and the Pro version gives you the analytics capability. And I think we're caught up on questions.
Yeah, you talked fast.
Zapier supported. Yes, it is. We actually use Zapier to do some data pullout from another application that we use internally. L&D integration, training. Training on the platform or training for the onboarding? Just in case, it's both. So training on the platform, yes, we can provide training on the platform. Training for the onboarding. There's a lot of different ways that we can do this. One of which is Freshservice has a knowledge base. We can populate the knowledge base with documents, with training videos and everything like that for the onboarding. The email that went out to the new hire, that email can actually have links to documents within the knowledge base. And in some organizations, some of the first email that go into the inbox with the onboarding process are links to different areas. There is a onboarding training video that we've done that covers not only the procedures within the company, but the procedures for various file shares, applications. It can be as complicated and detailed as you want. And again, we can create links that emailed out to the user as part of the initial setup of the email account. A little bit more elaboration. Phishing, required security training, platforms like know before.
Yeah, there's a lot to sort of figure out there, and I think discovery would play a central role to that. The short
Thank you.
answer is absolutely. We partner with a number of training companies, and we also provide our own training. So, depending on the needs of the client, we can absolutely not only build in the security training requirements into our onboarding process, but we can also include training that we provide as well.
And I want to say these are really good questions. Thank you.
I concur for sure.
George, is another question on asset management.
Asset management, hardware asset management, software asset management. Yeah, we can tie it into financials. Case in point, let's say SaaS licenses. Within the CMDB, the configuration management database, you create configuration items. So let's say Confluence is one, and you associate your users to that application. So you can actually run a report, and here's a workflow for you. You can define a manager for that application, run a report on a monthly basis to have that manager approve the user list or submit changes to the user list. So let's say, for some reason, somebody got onboarded, but for some reason, they still have that Confluence license at $10 a month or something like that. And it can get removed. And that report can go out to the manager, that can go out to an audience of people. I had a meeting earlier today, and I was explaining for every process, every procedure, find a way to audit it. So this way here, sometimes people get busy, things get dropped, and this way here, you enable yourself to check things